The biggest mistake most people make after escaping a narcissist is believing that cutting off all contact is the ultimate form of revenge. It is a common misconception, but it is not the most effective way to handle the situation. There is something that strikes much deeper, crushing them far more effectively, yet it is a path that most survivors accidentally avoid walking. By the time you reach the end of this discussion, you will understand the one specific shift that makes a narcissist feel truly powerless. This is not about trying to hurt them. Instead, it is about removing the single most important advantage they have always depended on to maintain their control over you. If you have ever sat there wondering why a narcissist suddenly attempts to re-enter your life, months or even years later, or why they seem strangely obsessed with you long after you have moved on, the answer is not as simple as them just missing your presence. It is about losing access to something they deeply believed belonged to them. Stay with me until the very end, because the final point explains why many survivors unknowingly continue to feed a narcissist even after they have firmly established a no-contact boundary. One of the most persistent myths about dealing with narcissistic relationships is the firm belief that simply going no contact is the most painful consequence a person like that can experience. While setting a no-contact boundary is an absolutely critical step for protecting your own mental health and creating the necessary space to begin your healing journey, it is not necessarily the singular event that shakes them to their core. What often carries a far more devastating impact is something that develops much later, long after the silence has been established and maintained. That profound shift is your complete and total emotional independence. A narcissist can often tolerate silence for a long time because that silence actually leaves plenty of room for their own imagination to run wild. In the absence of your voice, they can easily convince themselves that you are still thinking about them constantly, that you are waiting for their return, or that you are secretly holding on to hope that they will come back to you. As long as they can maintain the belief that they still occupy a significant central place in your emotional world, they can successfully preserve the illusion that their power and influence over you remain completely intact. The truly deep blow to their ego occurs when that illusion finally disappears. This happens when you reach a point where you are no longer organizing your internal emotions around them. Once that occurs, they lose a resource they relied on for constant validation. They are no longer the primary focus of your decisions, your fears, your hopes, or your daily thoughts. Your personal happiness no longer fluctuates based on their approval, and your internal peace is no longer disrupted by their erratic actions. That emotional shift is incredibly difficult for an individual who has spent their life depending on having psychological influence over another human being. It signals to them that the control they once thought was permanent has entirely faded away. This is why true recovery is so much more involved than just blocking a phone number or refusing to have a conversation. True freedom is achieved when you no longer measure your personal worth through their biased opinions or define your future trajectory by the painful events that happened in your past relationship. The greatest, most transformative change is not the silence between you. It is the moment your own inner world finally stops belonging to them. One of the most surprising truths about narcissistic dynamics is that intense emotional reactions can actually be the fuel that keeps the connection alive. Many people mistakenly believe that expressing anger, demanding accountability, or repeatedly confronting a narcissist will somehow force them to finally realize and acknowledge the damage they have caused you. In reality, These kinds of reactions often serve as confirmation that they still possess emotional influence over you. Whether the emotion you are showing is love, frustration, sadness, or intense resentment, the common thread is that your attention remains firmly focused on them. They continue to occupy valuable space in your thoughts, and that ongoing emotional investment serves to reinforce their own distorted sense of importance. This is exactly why genuine indifference is so significant. Indifference does not mean you are pretending that nothing ever happened, or that you are suppressing your true feelings. It means reaching a destination in your healing where their choices simply do not dictate your mood, your self-confidence, or your peace of mind anymore. You reach a point where you no longer feel a desperate internal pull to explain your side of the story, defend your life decisions, or prove your inherent value to someone who is incapable of seeing it. Their criticism loses the power to define who you are, and their praise or approval no longer feels like a necessary component for your self-worth. Instead of reacting automatically, you start to respond thoughtfully, or sometimes you do not respond at all, because there is simply nothing left that you need to prove. For a person who expected every single interaction to produce a specific emotional response from you, this change can be deeply unsettling. Manipulation depends entirely on you providing predictable reactions. When those reactions cease to exist, many of their old tactics lose their effectiveness. The conversations become shorter, the arguments fade into nothingness, and the old emotional hooks no longer catch. Your energy naturally shifts toward your own personal goals, your genuine relationships, and your overall well-being, rather than remaining tethered to their behavior. That quiet, calm, emotional detachment reflects genuine healing because it demonstrates that your life is no longer organized around someone else's insatiable need for control or attention. Another reason why achieving emotional independence can be far more unsettling to a narcissist than simple no contact is that it completely strips away their ability to control the narrative. In many narcissistic relationships, managing appearances and shaping the story is just as important as managing the people involved. They often work hard to influence how others perceive them, frequently presenting themselves as the victim, the hero, or the misunderstood partner, all while actively minimizing or denying the harm they caused you. If they can successfully influence the narrative, they can protect the image they have carefully constructed and avoid ever having to confront the uncomfortable truths about their own behavior. When you are still emotionally trapped in the relationship, you might find yourself spending a great deal of time defending yourself, explaining your perspective, or trying to convince other people of what really happened. Ironically, this cycle can keep you permanently connected to the narcissist's version of events, because your energy is still being consumed by the need to respond to them. But as your healing progresses, something fundamental shifts. You no longer feel the internal compulsion to argue over every single accusation or to correct every false story they spread. You become significantly more interested in living your own life than you are in winning a debate about the past. That shift removes a powerful source of control for them. The narcissist can continue telling their version of events to anyone who will listen, but it no longer has the power to determine how you see yourself. Your identity becomes firmly rooted in your own internal values, rather than their opinions or the image they project to the public. They lose the sick satisfaction of watching you chase their validation or react to every distortion they create. Over time, your calm and consistent way of living speaks much louder than any number of endless explanations ever could. People who truly know you and care about you begin forming their own conclusions based on your actions and your character, not on the stories they happen to hear. The greatest disruption is not that you expose them to the world. It is that you stopped allowing their narrative to define your reality. One of the most difficult things for a narcissist to witness is not your sadness after the relationship ends, but your genuine growth without them. During the time you were together, they may have subtly encouraged you to believe that you were incapable of succeeding, feeling loved, or having confidence in yourself without their guidance. Whether through passive-aggressive criticism, constant unfavorable comparisons, or providing affection only when it suited them, they often created an environment where your self-worth became inextricably tied to their approval. Over time, you may have even started doubting your own capabilities and believing that true happiness was only possible if they remained a part of your life. When you begin the process of healing, that false belief slowly falls apart. You start making your own decisions without looking to them for validation. You begin reconnecting with old friends, pursuing hobbies that bring you joy, focusing on your career, or simply enjoying quiet moments of peace that once felt impossible to achieve. Your confidence returns because it is no longer built on someone else's fickle opinion of you. You begin trusting your own judgment again. Once again, that quiet internal confidence changes the entire dynamic. It becomes the ultimate proof that their manipulation failed. They realize that their attempts to diminish you only resulted in you building a stronger, more resilient foundation for your own future. They are forced to confront the reality that they no longer have any power to shape your destiny. When you stop looking backward, when you stop waiting for an apology that will never come, and when you stop letting their past actions dictate your current emotional state, you completely disarm them. This is the true turning point of your recovery. It is the moment you realize that your peace is entirely your own to protect, and that no one can ever take away your ability to choose your own path forward. By stepping into this level of emotional independence, you permanently break the cycle of control, leaving them behind in the very silence they thought they could use to manipulate you. For a narcissist, this is deeply unsettling, because your progress directly contradicts the story they wanted you to believe about your own helplessness. If they had convinced themselves that you would always remain emotionally dependent on them, seeing you thrive creates a reality they cannot easily explain or rationalize. It challenges the image they held of themselves as someone who was indispensable or uniquely important in your life. The more fulfilled, healthy, and emotionally grounded you become, the less believable that image of their importance becomes. Your healing also effectively removes the emotional leverage they once relied upon to keep you close. The fears, the lingering insecurities, and the doubts they could once trigger no longer produce the same reactions from you. Instead of looking back toward the past with longing, you begin looking ahead toward the future with a clear sense of purpose. Proving through your daily actions that your potential was never limited by their presence and was never defined by their absence. If this has helped you understand narcissistic behavior in a completely new light, please take a moment to show your support and feel free to pass this message along to someone else who might be struggling to break free emotionally. Gaining a deep understanding of these patterns can save people years of unnecessary confusion and pain. Now, let us look more closely at what actually creates the absolute deepest sense of loss for a narcissist. One of the most widely misunderstood aspects of narcissistic behavior is the true role of what is called emotional supply. Many people assume this term only refers to receiving admiration, receiving compliments, or being showered with constant praise. But the reality is that emotional supply is much broader than that. Any strong emotional reaction you have can serve to reinforce a narcissist's sense of importance. Whether it is love, anger, fear, guilt, jealousy, desperation, or even your repeated attempts to reason with them, all of these serve as constant reminders to them that they still have a significant influence over your internal world. The specific emotion often matters much less to them than the simple fact that they are still capable of triggering it within you. This is precisely why some narcissists seem just as satisfied after successfully provoking an argument as they do after receiving genuine admiration. The key takeaway here is that your emotional engagement is the currency they use to feel powerful. And by choosing to become indifferent, you are effectively closing their account. You are choosing to stop paying the price for a relationship that was never built on mutual respect or love. And that, more than anything else, is what truly strips them of their power. You are reclaiming your life one emotion at a time. And that is something they can never take back from you. The reaction itself provides exactly the kind of proof they are looking for, as it confirms that they still matter enough to you to cause a disruption in your life. When you successfully transition from an emotional reaction to a state of true neutrality, that supply completely dries up. They will eventually realize that their words no longer trigger any kind of defensive explanation from you. Their absence no longer causes you any visible distress, and their presence no longer commands the energy in the room. This is the precise moment when the entire dynamic changes permanently. You have not just gone silent, you have actively revoked their authority over your mind and your heart, leaving them without the psychological leverage they relied on to control you for so long. If they can trigger a predictable response from you, they receive instant confirmation that they still hold weight in your world. A long emotional message, an angry confrontation, or your repeated efforts to make them finally understand the pain they caused can all unintentionally demonstrate that they continue to occupy your thoughts. From their point of view, emotional engagement often represents continued access and influence. The dynamic changes quite dramatically when that emotional investment finally disappears. Instead of reacting to every message, insult, or attempt they make to regain your attention, you begin responding with calm, firm boundaries, or sometimes with no response at all. Your focus naturally shifts toward your own path of healing, your other relationships, and your future, rather than remaining centered on their behavior. This does not happen overnight, but as your emotional energy returns to your own life, the source of validation they once relied upon becomes completely unavailable to them. The absence of emotional supply is not about trying to punish them or playing games. It is the natural result of genuine recovery, where your attention is no longer consumed by someone else's need for validation, conflict, or control. Your peace becomes far more valuable to you than any reaction they hope to provoke. One of the greatest sources of power in a narcissistic relationship is predictability. Over time, a narcissist often studies your emotional patterns, sometimes without you even realizing that it is happening. They learn exactly what makes you feel guilty, what triggers your anxiety, what words cause you to jump into defense mode, and what actions are most likely to pull you back into the relationship. This knowledge allows them to use the same familiar tactics over and over again because they know exactly what kind of response to expect from you. When your reactions become predictable, manipulation becomes much easier for them. This is exactly why your healing journey creates such a dramatic shift in the entire dynamic. As you recover, you begin recognizing their patterns instead of automatically reacting to them. A message that once would have sent you into a full state of panic now becomes something you can evaluate calmly and rationally. A comment meant to induce guilt no longer forces you to explain yourself or beg for understanding. An attempt to provoke jealousy or start an argument loses much of its impact because you finally understand the underlying purpose behind it. Instead of responding emotionally, you take a moment to pause, reflect, and choose what is healthiest for you. For someone who relied heavily on your predictable emotional responses, this change can be deeply frustrating. Their usual strategies simply stop producing the results they once did. The silent treatment no longer creates a sense of desperation in you. Unexpected compliments no longer have the power to erase their past behavior. Sudden, insincere apologies no longer guarantee you will give them another chance. The emotional buttons they once pressed so easily seem to disappear. Your growing unpredictability does not come from playing mind games or trying to confuse them. It comes from becoming emotionally grounded and making your decisions based on your own core values instead of reacting to their behavior. When they can no longer accurately anticipate how you will respond, they lose one of the most effective tools they once used to maintain their influence. Consequently, the relationship no longer follows the script they had come to expect. For many narcissists, one of the hardest realities to accept is seeing someone build a happy and fulfilling life without them. During the time you were together, they may have subtly or even openly encouraged the belief that you would never be as happy, successful, or loved if they were no longer a part of your life. They might have criticized your natural abilities, constantly questioned your best decisions, or made you feel as though they were the sole reason for your confidence and stability. Over time, this can create the false illusion that your future depends entirely on their presence. When you begin creating a meaningful life on your own terms, that illusion starts to collapse. You develop healthier, more supportive relationships. You pursue personal goals that light you up. You rediscover interests that were neglected, and you gradually experience a sense of deep peace that once seemed completely impossible. Your happiness no longer relies on winning their approval or proving your worth to them. Instead, it grows naturally from your own choices, your own values, and your own daily experiences. This quiet, powerful transformation sends a message without you ever having to say a single word. For a narcissist, this can feel like a direct rejection of the role they believed they held in your life. If they viewed themselves as irreplaceable or uniquely important to your existence, watching you thrive directly challenges that core belief. It suggests that their influence always had limits, and that your identity was never truly dependent on them. This can be very difficult for someone whose entire self-image is built around feeling exceptional or indispensable. Your success is not about making them feel defeated or proving them wrong. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were overshadowed during the relationship. As your confidence, stability, and emotional well-being continue to grow, your life becomes living evidence that healing is possible, and that your future is defined by your own resilience rather than by someone else's desperate need for control. Many people believe that freedom begins the moment they block a narcissist phone number, delete old messages, or walk away from the relationship for good. While those actions are often necessary and incredibly important, they represent only the beginning of the overall healing process. Physical distance creates immediate safety, but psychological freedom is what brings about lasting peace. It is entirely possible to have no contact with someone while still carrying them in your thoughts every single day. If you find yourself constantly replaying old conversations, imagining what you should have said in the moment, wondering whether they have finally changed, or hoping they will one day recognize your true value, they continue to occupy valuable emotional space in your life, even though they are physically absent. True emotional freedom arrives when your inner world no longer revolves around them. You stop measuring your progress by whether they miss you, whether they regret losing you, or whether they attempt to return to your life. Their choices no longer determine your mood, your level of confidence, or your sense of self-worth. Instead of waking up wondering what they are thinking, you begin focusing on your own goals, your own relationships, your health, and your future. The energy that was once consumed by confusion and deep emotional exhaustion gradually becomes available for building a life that reflects your own personal values. This shift is often the most significant change because it cannot be manipulated or taken away by anyone else. A narcissist may attempt to reconnect, try to provoke a reaction, or remind you of the past, but those efforts completely lose their effectiveness when they no longer control your emotional attention. Your peace comes from within, rather than from anything they say or do. That is the exact point where the relationship truly loses its hold over you, and your life is no longer organized around surviving their behavior, but around fully living your own. The greatest victory after a narcissistic relationship is not making them feel jealous, proving them wrong, or waiting for the day they finally realize what they lost. It is reaching a place where their opinion no longer determines your peace, their actions no longer control your emotions, and their presence or absence no longer defines your future. No contact may create the distance you need, but true healing begins when your mind, your heart, and your identity are no longer tied to them. That is the moment the cycle truly ends. So if you are currently on this journey, please remember that every single step you take toward emotional freedom is a step away from manipulation and a step closer to yourself. If this message resonated with you, please do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need this gentle reminder today. Your healing is not measured by how much they suffer, but by how completely you reclaim your life.